Today I'm going to do a short video about making a coil of clay. If you're thinking about starting to make coil pots, you're going to need to know how to make a coil of clay, which is, in some respects it's a very simple thing to do, but it can be a little bit tricky when you first start. There are a few things that can go wrong. So the first thing I'm going to do, because it's a very hot day here today, and the clay is drying out quite quickly. So when you start rolling the clay, the surface area of the clay obviously increases quite a lot, and the piece of the coil of clay is quite thin. It's about the thickness of your pinky finger, which means it dries out quite quickly. And when it dries out, it gets cracked, which you don't want. So to avoid that, I'm just going to spray a little bit of water on the board, and then I'm going to let that sit for a minute just to absorb in, because I don't want the board to be too wet, because then the clay will just slip around on top of it, but I don't want it to be so dry that it's sucking out all the moisture from the clay. So I might just give it a bit more of a spray. And then you can just wipe off the excess. So in terms of quantity of clay, a good amount, I would say, if you're making a coil cup or a coil bowl or something like that, but you don't need the coils to be too long, and when they get really long they get a bit difficult to manage and it can all start going a bit wrong. So I would suggest something about that size, about the size of a satsuma or a small lemon maybe. Just to start, it's good to practice with smaller pieces anyway. So this clay is quite soft and moist, relatively moist. First thing to do is make it into a ball and then squeeze it into a sort of a sausage shape. Now, normally what I do is I make the ends tapered, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to show you what happens, or what can happen. I don't know whether it's going to happen today, if you don't taper the ends. So first thing to do, squeeze it into a sausage, and then you can just use the palms of your hands to sort of roll it into a shape that's a bit easier to then start rolling on the table. So you've got your sausage of clay, and with the rolling action, what you want to do is you want to roll your entire hand like that. So it's from your fingertips to your wrists, like that, and keeping your fingers spread open too. If you roll like that, what happens is you get ridges in the clay where your fingers are. If you keep your fingers spread open like that, the fingers are basically sort of diagonal, and whilst you're rolling, you're also pulling the clay as well, pulling it that way, pulling it outwards. Now another tip to stop the clay from flattening out, because what can happen, I'll show you what happens, I'll flatten it out in a minute, but what can happen is it flattens out. So what you want to do is twist the clay, twist it at both ends, twist it in one direction that end and the other direction that end, so you get a spiral, and then you can just carry on rolling like that, and that will stop it from flattening out, and you can just keep twisting the clay like that. I'll tell you what, I'm going to spray that board again because it is getting a bit dry. Bit of a wipe. So what I do when I'm making the sausage shape, what I normally do is I kind of taper the ends to make it into a cigar shape or a cucumber shape, but I didn't do it with this. Because I wanted to show you what can happen is you can get like a hollow shape in the end there. Now that's just beginning to go hollow now, but if you keep rolling, that little dip there will get deeper and deeper. If the hollow goes deep inside the coil, of course you can get air pockets trapped in there, which can then cause explosions in the kiln. So If you taper, I'll show you, I'll do another coil in a second. If you taper the shape so it's a cucumber shape rather than flat-ended sausage, then you avoid that hollowing out. So you just keep rolling. And the aim with a sort of a, it's getting a little bit flat there. Can you see that's flattened out slightly? So what you can do, if it does flatten out, all you do is you put it on the narrow end, sort of perched on the narrow side, and then you can press it into more of a square shape, and then you can keep rolling. So press into a square shape, twist it up again, and this is pretty much, it's almost as thin as I want it to be. There we go. I think that's probably about right. Don't really want it to go any thinner than that. Now, what I'm going to do with this coil is I'm going to put it, wrap it in some plastic, because I don't want it to dry out. They do dry out very quickly, so I just put it in some plastic and put it to one side because I'm going to use that later on. So I'll just do another coil and I'll show you what difference it makes if you do a tapered end. So again, sort of squeeze it into a sausage or a log or whatever you want to call it. Roll it out with your hands. Keep it nice and round. Now, so what I did earlier on was I had the ends flattened like that, and then it ended up with the little hollow at the end there, which is a pain. So best thing to do is just squeeze it into a little, it's not quite a point, but it makes it more of a cucumber shape. So the other thing I would recommend actually, whilst you've got your cucumber, is just twist it a little bit before you start even, because that's going to help stop it from flattening out. So yeah, you're rolling. So the action is basically forward and backwards, but whilst you're doing that, you're sort of pushing out at the same time. You're sort of going like that. And then twisting. And you might find that certain parts get a bit thicker than others. That's fine. Just if one bit stays a bit thicker than the others, just work on the thick bit and ignore the thin bit. Okay, so this one I think is pretty much as thin as I want it to be. There you go. If you found this video helpful, do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and then you'll get a notification when I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. Bye.